It's always a challenge bringing a great story classic to the screen, giving visual form to characters and places that have only existed in the imagination. But it's the kind of challenge we enjoy.
Making Saving Mr. Bэнksa was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me to explore the history of one of the world's greatest filmmakers and his artistic collaborators here at the Walt Disney Studios. The Disney studio in the early 60s, during the time they were making Mary Poppins, was busier than it had ever been. Walt had branched out from purely animated films to television, live-action films, as well as creating exhibits for Disneyland and the 1964 New York World's Fair. One of the most remarkable things we discovered was that everything that Walt Disney was working on at the time contributed to the production of Mary Poppins. Our production designer, Michael Korenblith, and I did tons of research at the Walt Disney Archives to recreate the studio as it was during the time of Mary Poppins.
The very first trip that we took to the Disney Archives, we were just amazed with the amount of research that Walt had amassed about the creation of the studio, about the creation of the films that took place in the studio. And it really became apparent our film was really going to benefit tremendously by the fact that so little has changed since this studio was opened in 1940. And certainly the animation building, which is the jewel of this entire complex, is really pretty much as Walt saw it in his time.
One of the aspects of design that you showed me early on that I absolutely fell in love with was the work Kim Weber, and in terms of the studio and furniture and everything was so fantastic.
Walt's attention to detail in every aspect of his life was really reflected in his decision to hire Kim Weber to be the architect for this lot. Walt had conceived and designed the animation building working with north light, which was the best light for the animator. But if they weren't in a northern-facing exposure, he designed these beautiful slatted louvers so the light could always be modulated to put his animators in the best natural lighting conditions possible. And this is really kind of one of the last of the great pre-war campuses built in this very, very contemporary style that was specific to Kim Weber, all the way down to the font forms that is still associated with the studio today and affectionately known as Mouse Deco.
Nowadays, the animation building serves as production offices for films and TV shows. But when you walk the halls, you can really feel the history there.
It's a good story. It's timely, and not only that, it's timeless. They won't be ordinary pigs. They'll do something, give them personality. You know, we'll dress them up like sailors.
Another unique thing about the Disney studio in Walt's time was a sense of family.
My father would bring me to work to Disney Studios on Saturdays. It was like a kid in the candy store.
The studio threw parties for us. We had screenings. Every Christmas we couldn't wait because it was a great Christmas party.
It really was a family, wasn't it? We all knew each other, we grew up together.
And then there was the summer work program.
Right.
You know, boys got to do mailroom and maybe art props, and the girls did.
Well, we did steno, and we did the publicity, and then we took tours.
When I was 16, I got to be a traffic boy. Our main job was to service the studio and make sure that everyone got their mail. One summer, I got to be a Walt's traffic boy. They would give me a bike with an enormous basket in the front and minimal brakes. I picked up a big load of stuff from the print shop, and just as I got to the door of animation, everything fell out right in front of Walt, who was watching me. And he says, you know, you almost made it. It was fun. It was just fun to be here.
It was very cohesive. There was a great deal of enthusiasm. People liked coming to work. They liked the challenge. And it wasn't easy work at all.
And we have a sequence in Mary Poppins where we have the live characters in with the animated drawings. Of course, we have a lot of tricks of the trade here.
From Walt's earliest days, he experimented with camera tricks and with placing live actors into animated and other created settings. The sodium vapor screen process he used in The Parent Trap, The Absent-Minded Professor, and Darby O'Gill and the Little People paved the way for Mary Poppins' live action and animated settings.
know, in Mary Poppins, my dad had the assignment of doing penguins. So for months, it was Frank at the dinner table talking about trying to get these darn penguins to move around Dick Van Dyke's legs because he was always going to step on them. And I didn't know until I saw Saving Mr. Banks that P.L. Travers hated the penguins. The one thing she didn't want in the picture.
The wire tricks used in Absent Minded Professor led to the flying effects in Mary Poppins.
I feel like I could fly.
Just as we had to learn to make our animated cartoons talk, we had to find a way to make these characters talk too. Now, to accomplish this, we created a new type of animation. So new that we had to invent a new name for it. Audio animatronics.
Wet Enterprises developed dinosaurs for the 64 World's Fair, birds for the Tiki Room, the audio animatronic Abraham Lincoln, and all these things led to the Robins in Mary Poppins.
Did you ever get to see Mr. Lincoln when he was here, that very first audio animatronic?
Only heard stories of, you know, ripping off his jacket.
Yeah, he was a little too strong. The first time he sat down, he went right through the chair.
And really points out that almost everything that was done here was being done for the first time.
For the first time.
The team that created the stop-motion animation for A Symposium on Popular Songs, Babes in Toyland, and the Parent Trap title sequence was brought back for the Mary Poppins cleaning the nursery scene. Another unique thing that contributed to the success of Disney films around this time was that Walt, whose office was right up there, found the ideal team for his style of musical storytelling, Richard and Robert Sherman.
Our office was right down this hallway. It's quite different than it was, but still resembles the room, feels the room. You know, it was different. For example, here we had a very large desk in the middle of the room. Bob had a chair on that side, and I had a chair with wheels on the bottom of it so that I could be talking to him and I could swing around, and here would be the piano. And it was so funny because he'd throw an idea at me or something, and I'd just say, hey, okay, wait a second. And I hit the piano with
And he would stay there and listen to
he would sit there and listen, and we'd argue out the songs. And it was kind of fun like that, you know. We had a lot of fun. 11 years in this room.
In Saving Mr. Banks, we have, you know, our version of a rehearsal room where you're pitching the stories and songs.
It looks more like the way our office looked. That really does. It was kind of sparse.
And so did that happen then, in fact, here? Did PL came here?
Oh, PL was right in this room. Oh, yes. Saying, no, you can't do that. Oh, yeah. She sat at the desk with us.
Right.
With her tape recorder. She had to have that tape recorder, wall and sack, and she'd press it every time we started talking. We must be correct. We must be correct. And she'd put it down, and every word we said.
Mary Poppins comes with a deep intent, and we must ask ourselves in this play what she comes.
So when you guys were working on Mary Poppins, you were also working on songs for other movies as well.
Oh, yes, we were working on 5 different things at one time. Wow. I remember one day we got an assignment to write a Western or something, right in the middle of writing this very British musical. And Bob said, Walt, we're working on 5 things already. He says, I'm working on 25, you can do it. And he would leave.
You're here working, somebody else is in another office working. What was kind of the culture of the lot?
Like a great big university campus where everybody's cheering for the team. Everybody was on board. Everybody cared. And it was a great esprit. I've never experienced this in any other lot. It meant so much to us to get this picture made. We felt so strongly about it. It was a turning point in all of our lives. And Walt wanted us, this was going to be his magnum opus. This is going to be his big one. You know, this room is filled with so many memories.
Feed the birds, tuppence a bag.
Walt Disney was a man of many talents, and one of the main characteristics that he had was a curiosity about almost everything.
Walt wasn't a big movie mogul who sat in an ivory tower. He wandered the lot constantly. He knew every inch of it. He knew everybody by name. Back behind these sound stages were some very special buildings. There was the technical engineering and manufacturing shop. And that was where they built all the camera equipment and maintained all of the mechanical materials here at the studio. Walt Disney was always looking forward and learning new things, and he would take those things and make magic with them. Walt loved these places. He went into the mill often. He would watch the guys in the model shop making the things for Disneyland and the World's Fair. But he also apprenticed in his own machine shop to learn how to weld and machine and hand build his own live steam train that would go around on tracks. And it was a hobby that lasted him for the rest of his life.
One of the most fun things we did in traffic was go visit the back lot. And the Flubber Street was there, and the Western Street was there, and the Zorro set was there.
The weird thing about the back lot to me was that, 3/4 of the time you went there, you thought it was like a ghost town.
It was empty.
It was empty.
They weren't filming.
Yeah, they weren't filming.
But when they did, the whole place came alive.
Back in the day, this whole area was backlot. Scenes from Zorro were shot here, and that's why they called this the Zorro parking garage. In addition, rehearsals for Step in Time from Mary Poppins were choreographed on the backlot, even though they were shot on stage here on the lot.
Motion picture set is probably the most expendable part of filmmaking. As soon as we're finished with the set, our crews tear it apart, start building new ones for our next picture.
I think if Walt Disney were here today, he would really embrace the change. Walt was not necessarily sentimental or nostalgic. He was always looking forward, looking ahead. What can I do next?
I like to come and see the legends and see their hands here, so that there's a sense of we know where we came from and we honor that. We were surrounded by geniuses, really very talented people. But everybody here was creative, so nobody made too big a show of it.
Yeah, we grew up around excellence.
Yeah.
One of the differences between then and now was that somehow Walt seemed to be everywhere.
Frank. Oh, hey. Wait a minute. Get the idea first. The theme is pigs.
He'd still go home at a reasonable hour, but somehow he would get to every spot on the lot once a day.
And Miss Poppins says, where would you expect to be after going round the block?
This is the hall where we said goodbye to Walt for the last time. He had just come out of a screening room down the hall here, and then he saw Bob and myself standing down here, and he came over to us. He looked kind of sad. He was sort of pale and sort of shrunken a little bit. We didn't know it, but he was dying.
Our whole 40-some-odd years here has been in the world of making things move.
And he said, keep up the good work, boys. He never used to say that, but he said that to us that time. That's the last time we saw him. He said, keep up the good work, boys.
Richard, making this movie has been an amazing experience. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for recreating one of the most magical moments in my whole life, and that is getting permission to make Mary Poppins. God bless you. You did such a job.
I'll see you soon.
I'll see you.
It was an emotional experience for me, traveling back into the past for saving Mr. Banks. But Walt Disney didn't dwell on the past. He was always reaching for tomorrow. And he built this studio with that intention, that it would continue to grow and flourish into the future. And it really has.
Well, I think by this time, my young group of executives are convinced that Walt is right, that the quality will out. And I think that'll hang on after, as you say, after Disney.